YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back with less than a week until the NFL trade deadline. Got some trade scenarios for you guys today, going over trades contenders must make by the deadline. I don't have every single NFL contender here. I just wanted trades that made sense. Realistic trade scenarios, realistic trade candidates, what teams might trade for them. Give you some scenarios here. So excited about this. We have multiple trade deadline videos on the channel. More to come. We'll have grades if there's a good amount of trades next Tuesday at the deadline. So we'll be busy here. Hopefully you can join us. Like, subscribe to notifications on. Follow us on Twitter. Latest news, rumors, just thoughts on there. If you're not following us there, you're missing out. Links pinned in the comments for that. And our sponsors, Liquid IV. Code GOAT for a percentage off in GLD shop as well. The Buffalo Bills helmet chain out from the GLD shop. We have a giveaway going on with them. You get a pendant and a chain. Links pinned in the comments for anything I just rattled off there. So 12 scenarios. I have a couple for some teams here. The Bills, I think Hunter Renfrow makes some sense for the Bills. It's something I really want them to do. That's kind of this video is things like contenders must do to remain contenders or become better contenders. But I also think they're realistic. But the Bills are a little tricky because sometimes they just stay put. Sometimes they kind of rely on development, rely on what they already have. But I have two scenarios for the Bills in this video, by the way. But I want them to make some moves because they're a little underwhelming right now. I'm sure they'll figure it out at some point. But they have Stephon Diggs, one of the best in football. Gabe Davis, who is another outside receiver. I would like for them to get a guy that can play in a slot. Hunter Renfrow's, and of course, they got other players that can play, and they're specifically slot receivers. You got a young Khalil Shakir, who I do like, but you get better here. You get a little more consistent with a separator from the slot. So I would like this for the Bills. He's going to be cheap as well. The Raiders and Hunter Renfrow are working together to find a trade. It could even be cheaper on this. I guess it's debatable on if this is cheaper or if a 6-7 swap is cheaper, because sometimes those teams, don't really want the extra pick. They'd rather just get in the 6th round rather than the 7th round. So you can argue either way there, but thought this made sense. Renfrow to the Bills for a 7th round pick. I have a feeling the Bills are going to make a move. I just don't think it's going to be more than one, but I'm looking at these top two moves that I have for them. A corner is definitely a possibility. Dante Jackson, we know, is on the block, and teams have already been calling about him. Pretty decent veteran corner. Has seen different schemes. I obviously played, in Steve Wilkes' scheme recently, and now is in the Ejiro Evero's scheme. So look like he fit Wilkes a little bit better. I see the Bills mixing in man coverage with zone this year. So I think they can make it work, and they just, looking for corners, obviously. They get a little beat up there. They have no depth, but on top of that, they probably would like a starter. Maybe put Elam back as like a rotational corner, perhaps, and start Jackson with Benford. Or you don't have to do that. You can have Jackson as a rotation guy. If you trade for him, you like to start him, though. But it seems like the Panthers will trade Jackson, so I don't think he'll be too expensive at all, really. I think normally he'd probably be worth a 5th. Maybe like a 4th, 6th swap, somewhere around there. But because they're trying to push him out, the Panthers are in somewhat of a rebuild. They want to gain picks, but they also maybe want to use them to trade for like a receiver, something that can be part of their future. So 6th round pick, it could even be a 7th. Just it seems like teams are kind of just giving away players they don't want anymore, even if they're decent players. So the Bills, we'll talk about Dante Jackson again in a second. Another team that I think could and should target him. It's kind of what this video is. Should for contenders. But yeah, the Bills definitely can use his help. We talked about a scenario in the past. Look at them looking for linebacker. Josie Jewell from the Broncos, a possibility. We already had a scenario in a different video like that. But those are two guys, Renfrow and Jackson, that I definitely could see for the Bills. Wouldn't expect both. It's just kind of how the Bills are. They stay a little quiet, but they did restructure Deion Dawkins. We talked about it on Twitter recently, which is basically taking space, cap hits for him now, pushing them back to the future. So you do that to do something now, and it doesn't always work out. You don't want to force something if the value isn't right, but I feel like they're going to do something here. Other corners they can look at, there's not too many that are standing out. We talked about Jalen Johnson for them at one point, the Bears corner, but it feels like they're going to keep him, maybe try to extend him. He had a really good game last week. And if the Bears probably be open to trading him, but it'd probably take quite a bit of value there, much different than this. So Christian Fulton from the Titans is another one. He had one really good year a couple years ago, a really good season a couple years ago, and then really fell off. He's playing less and less. He still plays for the Titans, but he's playing less and less, and they don't have the greatest corners either over there. So the reason, I watch out for him maybe for the Bills, but that's just like an instant depth piece. It just depends on how they're feeling. Are they good with Benford and Elam starting? I know they're good with Benford starting. If they're good with those guys, then yeah, go get a depth guy like a Fulton. But if they could want a starter, they want to win it all, so they want to get, if they want to win it all, go and get as good as you could possibly get. They've kind of been hammered with injuries. But Dante Jackson, we're sticking with him. We're talking about the Lions. There's two teams in this video, two contenders that I think could look at Dante Jackson. Of course, there's other teams that are not contenders that could look at him as well. But I'd look out for the Bills and the Lions, mainly. The Lions got beat up in the pass game against Lamar Jackson, the Ravens last game, and they got beat up on the field, but they were beat up as well. Emmanuel Mosley, but you hate to say it, but you almost expected him to get hurt at some point just because that's how his career's been, unfortunately. And then Jerry Jacobs was out last week, and Cameron Sutton's pretty much got to carry the cornerback group. That's pretty much what's going on there. Even he is like an inside-outside. He's been fine outside, but so they definitely can use another piece. And, if Jerry Jacobs, that's the tricky part because they're another team that kind of relies on development. It's kind of worked out for them because they've drafted very well, but now that they're a very good team, do you pull the trigger to get yourself better now? But do you want to maybe they're thinking Jacobs going to come back. We want Sutton and Jacobs to start. We don't want anybody else to come in and be the starter like Dante Jackson. We want those guys to start. So maybe they don't go get a starter. Yeah, again, Christian Fulton's kind of like that. Dante Jackson's up here. I mean, not in terms of NFL corners, but in terms of the obvious candidates. And then you got Christian Fulton, who's probably like a really good depth piece. So maybe they'd rather do that. We'll see. But they're trying to win something special this year. So go and get a corner that could help you. And I think a 6th-round pick could do it, even though his value, just based on his talent, probably be a little bit more. But given the circumstances, I think he could go for less. Based on what else is going around with trades in the NFL, and based on the Panthers just really wanting to add picks and really wanting to them and Dante Jackson really wanting to move on. It feels like right now. Another move I think the Lions can make is Chase Young, which Chase Young and Montez Sweat are being talked about a ton right now. We're talking about him on Twitter as well. We're going to talk about Montez Sweat in this video as well. I'll tell you this. Both of them won't be traded. I'd be shocked if both were traded. I'd be very much shocked if both Chase Young and Montez Sweat were both traded. One, I think, is going to get traded. Unless the Commanders beat the Eagles this week, then maybe neither. But the feeling I get is one will be traded, and I think which one is more likely. I think it's clear which one is more likely. It doesn't mean it's guaranteed that one, but I think Montez Sweat is more likely than Chase Young, just because the Commanders, they're looking to trade one. They don't want to extend. They don't want to spend the money right now fully on both those guys. Maybe they're going to enter in some sort of retool. Maybe not a rebuild, but a retool mode. So you keep the younger one, the one with more upside, and that would be Chase Young. But since it's a possibility, since we're hearing it's a possibility that one is dealt, I wanted to find a home in this video for Chase Young. I think the Lions made sense. The Lions, they do like to rely on their own guys, and they have some pretty good young guys. They have Aiden Hutchinson, who's great. But they could get better opposite him, and I think they'll be very picky, like I said, because I think if it's not the right person, if it's not the right player, they rather just develop their own guys, which they've been doing great in. So Chase Young, who kind of fits the mold, what they look for, high upside type player, still young. They have a load of cap space in the future. I think they would love to pair him and Hutchinson. This is a team that I think this is a player that the Lions would be open to doing that with, and it's a team that I think could grab him if he's dealt. I am leaning, if I had to predict, I'm leaning towards Sweat getting traded, Young not, but I think it's a possibility Young is traded. So I did want to throw one Young scenario in here. I've been hearing just straight up a 2nd-round pick for Chase Young. It's hard for me to believe. I think it's got to be more. I mean, yes, you have to give him a new deal. Yes, he's had injuries, but he's only 24. You think he kind of will outgrow those injuries, and there was really nothing super major. It was like, all right, we have a high upside player here. Let's not jeopardize his future. It was kind of one of those situations, as I gathered. So I think he's pretty valuable, and I think the Commanders would rather trade Sweat. They don't really want to trade Chase Young. They're open to it, so I actually think it would take a bit. A 2nd and 3rd makes sense. Before I've heard these things, I would even think a late first wouldn't be out of the question, but now it sounds like it's out of the question. But a second, third, you're not guaranteeing that. Could be a second and fourth. If it's a lone second, I would hope it would be an early one for and it wouldn't be from the Lions, for Washington, but it'd be a pretty good deal for the other team, for the other, like if the Lions just gave up a second, pretty damn good deal. I want to throw a Chase Young scenario here. It is possible. I think Sweat is a little more likely, and we'll talk about him. We'll talk about him with two different teams. And again, we talked about on Twitter, he has a long list of landing spots, and I kind of wanted to focus on this specific video. We have a bunch of trade deadline videos, more to come to. I kind of wanted to talk about contenders, trades they must make, in my opinion, to stay or become more of contenders. But I do think teams not in this video, Falcons stand out as well. I think for Montez Sweat, the Bears, the Raiders, like those three teams stand out that we didn't talk about in this video. I definitely could see it, but the Jaguars make sense. It kind of fits their prototype pass rusher they look for, like super long, athletic, mainly the length part. They need some help in there. They did get Smoot back recently. They played all right last game. But they've been a little underwhelming besides Josh Allen. So looking to add another piece. And the issue with them is, well, first the Calvin Ridley what they have to give up hasn't been determined yet, because do they give him an extension? That's kind of what I'd imagine they would. So they would give up a second. So they don't have a second. Sweat, I think, would be, in my opinion, worth like a late second, early third. I'm hearing he can go less than that. But from a contender team like the Jags, I think that would be a later third. I would think you would have to give up something else as well, something decent, like a late third and a fifth. It seems like a better deal for the Jags, in my opinion. I think Sweat, he's 27, but he came in as a very raw prospect, so it kind of makes sense that he's solid right now, not great. He could still actually be very, very good, better than he is now. But the thing with the Jags also is they have to extend Josh Allen. They have Trayvon Walker there. They'll have money in the future. They have to extend Calvin Ridley. So that's a tough part, but that's maybe why they wouldn't go for a Chase Young, who would be more expensive in the future, or a Brian Burns, who would be even more expensive. Montez Sweat would be somewhat expensive, but not crazy, something they can make work. So this is kind of like the highest end, I think. Daniil Hunter, another guy, which I don't think is traded anymore, would be super expensive. So unless they want him for a rental, if they trade for one of those guys, it could be a rental. I don't know if they'd be in business of doing that, a rental, but so Sweat, he'll be expensive, but they can make it work. They can make it work, and then give Josh Allen the big money. You don't have to give Allen and Daniil Hunter both crazy money. So we'll see. I think this makes sense for them, and I would really watch for Montez Sweat to be traded. I keep hearing that what he's going to go for is less than you think. So could it even be less than this? Again, I had to throw in the fifth as well, because that's a next year fifth, because this is probably a later third, but that seems like a really good deal for the Jags. I would consider a late second for Montez Sweat, because I think he has upside still, and he's been pretty solid. He's pretty productive, especially this year. I guess the thing is, he's not super consistent with the pressures, and he plays with Chase Young, Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne. So I guess that's, maybe other teams just aren't as high on him. So, but he does have an expiring deal as well. Commanders, do they get desperate for picks? I think a lot will be on the Eagles game this week. If they beat the Eagles, they might be less of sellers. If they lose, I definitely watch out. Another team another contender I like from Montez Sweat. Again, this was kind of a contenders video I thought of, but I like the Falcons, and the Falcons could be a playoff contender. I was kind of focusing on the teams that could take the next step and kind of turn into a Super Bowl team, but Falcons, Bears more so, and Chase Young though, because he's younger. They're still rebuilding, perhaps. Raiders. I like the Raiders for Montez Sweat as well. Probably more than those other two teams I just named in terms of the Bears and the Falcons. Maybe they're all pretty close, but the 49ers I think could use another pass rusher. I guess the argument against it would be they have Nick Bosa, they just paid him big money, and they have Drake Jackson, they have Randy Gregory, who they just traded for. There's not a lot of stock put in those guys, right? So they're trying to win right now. Their pass rush is pretty underwhelming against Minnesota. That's just one game, but they could use somebody else in there. Montez Sweat definitely scheme-wise fits their defense. That's what they look for. The issue with the Niners is they have a lot of space now, so look for a splash move now. But they do not have a lot of space in the future, so it can mean multiple things. It means they can't really extend guys. that are really, really expensive. Chase Young, those types of players that they could trade for. They might be able to make Montez Sweat work. But also, maybe just because they have a lot of cap right now doesn't mean they're going to spend it. Maybe they want that cap to roll over because they don't have a ton in the future. And they don't have a ton of obvious cuts, like they're going to free money here. They don't really have that. So I think a bunch of that space that they made, that they created, that they have, I think a lot of it could be rollover cap to help them in the future. But they can still, that doesn't mean they can't go for Montez Sweat. I would just say probably not go for a guy that you have to expend to crazy money. And he'll be pretty expensive too. But, so that's why Montez Sweat, if they're going to go for a pass rusher, makes a little more sense. So we talked about a third and a fifth with the Jags. I gave you a slightly different scenario. Who knows? The Jags might be picking later than the Niners. But actually what I was thinking here is the Niners have compensatory picks. So compensatory is the very end of the round. So it would be the very end of the third round. So maybe a fourth round pick. So just a slightly different scenario there. Again, if it's a late pick, like the Niners, Jags, a late second could make sense. You could argue for it or against it. To me, a early third's like the latest Sweat should go for, but it's sounding like be prepared for him to go a little less. But in this case, you get 2 picks at least if you're the Commanders. But those are some contenders to watch out for Sweat. But that's a hot name right now with Hunter Burns kind of being pulled off the board, and the Commanders probably would rather keep Chase Young than Sweat. So Sweat is the guy to watch right now for the higher end available pass rushers. Another one for the 49ers. I keep hearing they're going to look for another defensive back, more so a guy that can play corner. I guess I could see it for depth, or you get a guy that could start or be depth. And I like the fact that Jalen Mills has experience at corner, in safety, and in the slot, all over. He can start in the slot for them, we'll say. He can be a backup cornerback and a backup safety. Their safeties, I thought, played much better under DeMeco Ryans, the way he used him. They're running a lot more man coverage now. These corners are on an island, and their safeties are more so their best play is around in the box, intermediate routes. They're not really deep, rangy ball hawk, over the top safeties, and neither really is Jalen Mills for that matter. But again, he's a playmaker. He's got range, the athleticism, the experience at corner and safety. But just having another option back there, if Gibson's not playing like he did last year, perhaps at one point, so I think that was kind of a bonus. But more so corner depth. But the Patriots are not playing him a whole lot, but he does seem to get 20-25% snaps every single game. But he could be a little on the cheaper side. The Patriots could add some more picks. The Niners can get a guy that can help them out in their potential Super Bowl run. So kind of a smaller one here, but one I could definitely see. I could see Jalen Mills with the Cowboys as well. I really thought about that. But Christian Fulton's a guy to watch too, because the Titans could be sellers. They've already sold Kevin Byard. Christian Fulton's been a little underwhelming since that really good season he had a couple years ago. But they could trade more pieces, and he's playing a little bit less and less as well. And like I said, Jalen Mills can make some sense for the Cowboys because he can, be corner depth or just defensive back depth in general. I think specifically they're looking for a just straight up corner depth, because obviously Trayvon Diggs got injured. He's out for the year, but Gilmore and Deron Bland look fantastic at corner. Jordan Lewis is a solid slot corner. I guess it'd be the way to, the Jalen Mills, the reason to go for him, slot corner. Lewis has had injuries in the past, but, again, I think more so just looking for quality outside corner depth. So, and that could be Fulton here. So get a young corner here, and the Titans could be sellers right now. He'll probably be really, really cheap. So 2024 7th round pick is what made sense. But Jalen Mills, again, an interesting guy to look out for. I thought the Eagles made sense. They brought in Byard, but doesn't mean they will be completely out on Mills. So I guess not the biggest name, but a guy to watch out for. But Fulton's another guy. The Titans guys in general. DeAndre Hopkins, which name is popping up a lot. I still don't know if the Titans could be sellers, but I don't know if they trade him. They signed him to a 2-year deal for a reason. He's playing very, very well, despite them not being the most high-powered passing attack. He's playing very well for the Titans. He doesn't look like he's washed up at all, like people thought he would be, not even close. And if they're going to play Will Levis, and do they want to remove receivers from Will Levis and kind of stunt his growth? So I don't know if it makes a whole lot of sense, but they do really want picks. They are trying to build a future. So I guess it could make sense. Trying to find a landing spot, I guess a team that, maybe isn't a contender that I would watch out for is the Saints, and the Saints can make some sense. Olave is probably going to be fine. I'm sure he's going to continue playing, but whatever happened off the field. But he's kind of your speedster guy that can play inside and out. Michael Thomas is kind of your, possession guy that can play inside or out. So go get a true outside receiver that can, that is pretty consistent. So I think the Saints actually make sense. But kind of looking at contenders, I like the Chiefs. They did trade for McCole Hardman, but they're in the driver's seat right now. They want to stay there. They want to win another Super Bowl. So go get as good as you could possibly get. Add a big time receiver, a type of receiver they just don't have right now. They do not have a DeAndre Hopkins when it comes to skill level, but I meant the type of receiver. I'll tell you what though, Rashee Rice, who's a different type of receiver, is really coming along. I'm a big fan of what I've seen from him. But originally thought a fifth, but it just seemed like, the Titans, I don't know if they really want to get rid of Hopkins, and he's still playing so well, and that's what Tannehill at quarterback. So fourth made sense, but maybe it feels a little rich, so a swap of a seventh and a fourth I thought made some sense there if this were to happen. But I can definitely see the Titans just hang on to him because they just want to help Levis grow as much as they can. But Titans are a team to watch. They did trade Kevin Byard for, not the most value in the world. Derrick Henry, I would love this for the Baltimore Ravens. I would just love this for football. It'd be weird to see him away from the Titans, but I think it's a possibility that Henry could be dealt. They like Tyjae Spears a lot. They're using him a bit too. So, Henry's not off the field a ton, but he's off the field more than you would think, more than you would have thought going into the season. And again, the Titans might be finally entering rebuild. They weren't sure going into the year if they really wanted to be, and now it feels like they're kind of getting there. I think a lot could depend on if they win or lose the Falcons this week. But they could trade like the veteran pieces, try to grow around the young pieces, and they need draft picks. They badly need draft picks. They're lacking quality depth because of the lack of draft picks they've had and that they still have. So the Ravens look legit right now after dominating the Lions, and they're a good rushing offense. They have decent backs, but they just do not have anything near Derrick Henry. Just him and that Lamar Jackson offense, just like how much you have to fear if you're a defense is just ridiculous. They already have a very solid defense. I'd say they could use a pass rusher, and we'll talk about that in a little bit here. I don't think they're going to spend like crazy money though on that, at this time, but this would be scary. The Ravens, they're very good. They're impressive right now. The rest of the AFC might be a little more underwhelming than I thought. I still hesitate to think, the Ravens can stay healthy enough to win a Super Bowl. Can this team win the Super Bowl? I think they can get very, very close, but if they add Derrick Henry, I'm loving the Ravens that much more. I'm thinking it's going to be a problem. It's going to be something different. It's like there's just so much you have to worry about, and if they stay healthy, I think they could be the favorites in the AFC if they make a move like this. So I would be a massive, massive fan of this. This would be a huge problem. So, the Titans gave up Kevin Byard for pretty cheap, but they like Derrick Henry is the Titans. They're not going to give him away. Second round pick could make sense in terms of his skill value, but I just don't know if somebody trades a second right now. So a third and a seventh is what made sense to me for Derrick Henry. Titans go in that rebuild, use Tyjae Spears a bit more, who they like, and he looks fantastic for a rookie. And the Ravens get even better here with Derrick Henry. And I actually thought about combining these two, but I kept them separated because I think maybe it's a little too bold if we have stat specific. The Titans trading Danico Autry and Derrick Henry, the Ravens in one deal. But I'd watch out for the Ravens and both those guys. Danico Autry, who is a unique, versatile defensive lineman, rushing off the edge, but can play 3 technique as well. But the Ravens could use another edge rusher. And the Ravens are a team that they just got, guys that can just ball. It didn't really depend on it wasn't really a guy that specifically, played a specific scheme, has to fit this scheme. It's just a guy that just is a ball player. That's just, look at Clowney, like guys that they like, and Clowney played with the Titans as well. And Odafe Oweh has come back, and he looks pretty good as well. But just adding another piece in there, and kind of a versatile piece, so kind of keep your options open there. Because they've been getting after the quarterback very well, but they would like to get better because they view themselves as a contender, as they should. And they have some guy, Clowney's been injured in the past, away, has some minor injuries in the past. So just adding another piece in there. I really thought about, at one point I thought like Danielle Hunter made a ton of sense, but now two things. I don't know if the Ravens spend big money at that position. They're tied up in money for the future. And I don't think the Vikings would trade Danielle Hunter. Do they look at Chase Young and Montez Sweat? It's a possibility. I'm starting to think they kind of go the cheaper route. So Danico Autry, another one that I almost plugged in this video was Preston Smith, the Packers pass rusher. Could definitely see that, Preston Smith. But I've heard teams been calling out Autry, so I felt a little more comfortable going with him. Tough to figure out value because he's up there in age, but he's very, very solid. The Titans are big-time sellers right now, so I think his talent level probably says fourth, but again, he's up there in age, expiring deal, so I don't think there's any way they get a fourth. So fifth or sixth, or is there a swap? Titans get a 5. The Ravens maybe get back a 7. That's a possibility as well. Somewhat similar to the Chiefs-Titans one we had. Except that was a 4th and a 7th. This would be a 5th and a 7th. So it's a unique pass rusher to watch for here. Again, Preston Smith, if you're looking for a solid pass rusher that is in that price range of compensation, but in terms of money as well, financially, yeah, that's another one. Carl Lawson, another one. Autry, Lawson, Preston Smith, the higher end guys. Again, I think Hunter and Burns are off the board. Sweat maybe at the top of that. Maybe Young is a possibility as well. For them. And then one more, Jerry Jeudy to the Browns, I think makes some sense. I think Jeudy has a pretty decent shot. He gets traded. I really don't think Sutton's going to get traded at this point, but Jeudy could. 3rd round makes sense. Some people are talking about more. I don't know if I would trade more because he's been a little underwhelming, but he still has upside and he's solid. But it could be a 3rd and a 6th maybe. I don't really see a 3rd and a 5th. Maybe a little too much. It's possible. Could it be a lone 2nd? It's possible. I wouldn't recommend it. Deal is somewhat coming to an end. Been a little underwhelming, but I think he's still good. He can be good. But the Browns, I've heard, are looking at receivers, looking at offensive line, and could look elsewhere as well. But looking at their receivers, DPJ's been playing a little bit less snaps. They have Amari Cooper, who's been fantastic, a good outside receiver, and they have Elijah Moore, who's been pretty solid for them. He's strictly an inside receiver. Jeudy is an outside and inside guy, so getting kind of like a little bit of both in there, I think makes some sense. Like, you don't want strictly a slot guy. You don't want like your Amari Cooper type as well, or Donovan Peoples-Jones type, or he's like kind of physical possession, contested catcher. You kind of want a separator that can do a bit of everything. That's really the only target the Browns should have there. So, and they are, they're not afraid to make moves, some somewhat splash moves. They'll make trades for sure. I would expect them to be active. I expect one move at least from the Cleveland Browns. So I thought Jeudy made a ton of sense for them. The Broncos get a 3rd round pick. They should be in rebuild mode. They should be sellers, but they shouldn't just give guys away at the same time. But again, that one made a lot of sense. But a lot of these guys could get traded to teams that we did not talk about in this video. This video was just more of because we do every type of video for the trade deadline. We have a bunch more to come. So it's kind of like what contenders should do, what they could, not only what they could do, like what's realistic, what I think they should do, but what they could do to get themselves more of contenders. For me, so a lot of talking points in this. Like, how could they become higher up on my board at least? What could get them to make them take that next step, in my opinion, at least. So we'll see. It's always fun time of the year. It could end up being very underwhelming. Sometimes it is. But I still like the talk and all that. I don't think a lot of the stuff we cover that we hear isn't, I don't like to cover like the BS, like what's just rumors, but teams are making calls. There's talk around there. We'll see what actually happens. We'll have you covered for it. Again, like I said multiple times, we have a few somewhat recent trade deadline videos on the channel. I'd recommend checking those out. And then we'll have more to come like this one. And then if there's a decent amount of trades, we'll have a trade grades video. If this is a couple, we'll post the grades on Twitter. But last year we had a trades grade video. So a lot of fun. And then we have our weekly content as well. So join us for all that. Like, subscribe, turn notifications on. Make sure you follow us on Twitter. The instant news, my thoughts, rumors are on there right away. So links put in the comments for that. Anything you look for. Let's get to it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.